plotted. He plotted how to recruit faculty, how to develop and promote the minor, how to forge vital community connections, and how to give Asian American studies a meaningful presence not only on campus, but regionally and nationally. I do want to make a long story short, but it's hard, because Kenyon's own modesty about his professional accomplishments will force me to speak at a little bit greater length. But I'll be brief. Kenyon secured new hires. He oversaw the development of new courses. He created this distinguished lecture series, inviting scholars, writers, activists, community citizens, and others to make presentations at CSUN. They came. He continued to network. It involved taking a lot of people to lunch, didn't it? He placed a small department on a large and growing national map. He served as president of the National Association for Asian American Studies, and he helped this once fledgling West Coast Association grow into a mature and respected national body. We faculty who attended these conferences in the early 1990s were proud to represent CSUN as an academic entity. Kenyon also made sure that we early members of the department had opportunities to interact with other faculty from other ethnic studies departments in the region. So he asked the important questions. How do we want to define ourselves as an academic community among other academic communities? He pursued the vital community connections, from interacting with members of the Valley Chamber of Commerce to instigating the San Fernando Valley Oral History Project. He sought input from all, including students, with whom he always maintained a particularly warm professional bond. I can remember that one of his proudest achievements among a long list of achievements was when he was nominated by his students for a distinguished teaching award. Everywhere he went, he made friends, he raised consciousness, he made a difference. Plus, he began inviting folks to dinner. At his home, things were looking up. He did the institutional hard work at Academic Council, the work at EPC. He led the way in expanding the curriculum, including guiding all of us who were members of the department in the mid-1990s in developing a new major and double major in Asian American Studies. In his spare time, he served as the director of liberal studies. Yeah, Elizabeth Adams is down there. She gets that one. Liberal studies happens to be the largest single major in the College of Humanities. When the Chancellor's office formally approved the major in early 1998, it was, as I say, only the second standalone major in Asian American Studies in the country, the first being at San Francisco State. Now, if we look around the country, the AAS major, AAS programs, and departments are everywhere. They're all over the country. The Asian American Studies Department at CSUN was the result of collective efforts of many, including students, faculty, and administrators. But its full realization was the expression of one person's splendid vision and energy. Kenyon Chan is unsurpassed as a leader, mentor, and administrator. Well, that old refrigerator unit eventually mounted some wheels and was driven off. And I could think it the refrigerator heaven. More likely it became a multi-unit condominium in Casper. In any case, Kenyon moved to a small office space in Sierra Hall with Ed Say, who is now our dean of the college, who was then chair of the Women's Studies Department. And in a way, that was a good life. But good things do come to an end. And sometimes because there are greater needs and bigger challenges elsewhere. Kenyon went away. He was hired as dean of the Bellarmine College, which is the College of Liberal Arts at Loyola Marymount University, where he was instrumental in developing diversity initiatives at that university. A few years later, he was hired as vice president of academic affairs at Occidental College, where he restructured the Student Affairs Division and the student government. He raised over $21 million, and he instituted new and broader diversity initiatives at the very college President Obama once attended. Eventually, Kenyon served as interim president of the college. And still things change. Today, Kenyon is the chancellor of the University of Washington, LaSalle campus. We don't know if he'll be a good chancellor, because unlike at CSUN, the LaSalle campus of the University of Washington did not make it to the NCAA tournaments. There was no March Madness around, so the jury remained out. But somehow I suspect he will do a better than average job. And I do know this, that after all these years, he remains the same warm, down-to-earth, approachable, congenial, democratic, guy-next-door visionary he has always been. So please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Kenyon Chan.
Well, I think I should just sit down now. We should have more food and enjoy the evening. I don't know there's much more to say. I really appreciate your warm introduction, George. Not to correct some of it, though, because as you know, George is an English professor known to exaggerate. I am delighted to be here this evening at CSUN. It's a wonderful opportunity to return home. This to me is my academic home, and I've always considered it that. I thought back, though, this is the 19th anniversary, right? So normally people celebrate 20, 25. So I thought, are they telling me something, or they know something about my health or something? I didn't think I'd make it to next year. But in any case, I'm thrilled to be here for your 20th anniversary, and it's unbelievable to believe that the department's that old. And it's just a thrill to me to see some of our first students here, which I'll introduce you later as we talk about the department. When I think about Asian American Studies, I thought about my remarks tonight, though. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the story of Asian American Studies in a larger context, one that I hope won't be forgotten and how we got here and where we go. And I'll talk a little bit about CSUN in the early days. But some might focus the roots of Asian American Studies and begin that story at the San Francisco strikes back in the 1960s. Some of you who think of Asian American Studies have certainly studied that. And if you do, if you haven't done that, then Alan's not doing his job while talking about that. It will become obvious to you very quickly, however, that I'm not a historian, and I don't want to pretend to be a historian. But I want to talk about history, and I want to talk a little bit about where Asian American Studies came from. And I want to begin way before the San Francisco strikes, because I really think that the roots of Asian American Studies begin back in World War II. In World War II, and I'm going to go through this quickly, so I'm going to open wide. I'll do that more quickly. The war provided a stark contrast between, for many, many minorities, particularly African Americans and Chinese Americans, who were fighting for freedom on one hand and democracy, and yet fundamental human rights of Japanese Americans were being violated in our own home. The Jim Crow South was strong and vigorous, and a number of very significant people from the armed forces would come back home to a setting that was so starkly different than the setting they were fighting for. When they returned from war and returned to the Jim Crow South, and many felt the intense racism of the North, it was very strange for them to get a feeling, well, you know, we just gave our lives, many of our fellows gave their lives, limb, and emotions to this war, yet to face discrimination and racism as they returned to the country that they fought so hard for. Asian Americans know this story well. The stark contrast between forced relocation of Japanese Americans and the heroic accomplishments of the 442nd are well known to all of us now. The resistance of the Nono boys at camp or Gordon Hayashi suggests a community beginning to question its place in America. Before the war, Chinese Americans were often excluded from many of the jobs that are quite common to us now, the executives and